Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would talk about the F-5A. This is not the American one, which is the event vehicle, it's actually the one that they stuck in the Japanese tech tree for Thailand, and it's the first F5 that you run into for the Japanese tech tree, and it's really fun, just like all of the other F5s in the game. The F-5A is slightly different from the standard F-5E that a lot of people talk about. The basic difference is it isn't as good in terms of speed, because it has the J85 GE13s, the engines, and then also it has a few less factors. So basically it doesn't have the GS, which is very nice for the guns on the F5E, and also it doesn't have as good missiles. The F-5A only gets AIM-9Es, and it kind of starts you in a good place in terms of the F-5s, because one thing that everybody gets wrong on the F-5s that I generally talk to is that they are missile platforms. The F-5s, even the highest echelon ones with the best missiles, are not missile platforms, they are gun platforms with set-up missiles. Now, this slightly changes with stuff like the F-5E SCU, but still, with that vehicle and even the one with the Derbies, they're still set-up missiles where your guns are your main attack. And that's why these F-5s are really fun to play. They are some of the pure dogfighters, which you just generally don't get around these BRs normally. Instead, what you get is just vehicles which spam missiles and hope for the best, whereas an F-5 in a dogfight is nearly unmatched, apart from against maybe some J-35s and also some other Delta Wing aircraft, but even then you can still beat them when they run out of energy after their first or second turn. The F-5A is no different, it's just at a lower BR, which means that if you know the guns well, you can do even better in it than stuff like the F-5E, which generally went up in BR, because it was so strong in that role. So whenever I see people talk about the missiles on this thing, just remember that. It isn't something that's supposed to be designed around the missiles. The missiles are an added bonus on a vehicle like this. So, does this vehicle end up in a positive place? It does. 10.7 is a BR, which feels pretty good right now. 11.3 obviously is very strong with certain vehicles like the good old Vigan, the J37, and then also other vehicles such as the F-4E. But generally, what you're fighting at this BR is IR missiles, a lot of MiG-21 BISs with the R-60s, which, you know, I don't really rate at all. And also, the cool thing about the F-5, since you're mainly facing IR missiles, is this vehicle has a very nice countermeasure set with 30 large caliber countermeasures and 60 standard countermeasures. And if you've ever faced an F-5, you know that these things have an incredibly low heat signature in terms of its engines, so therefore it's very hard to hit with missiles. So you can force people into dogfights by burning all of their missiles, and that just means you need a head on a swivel and you need to be able to use that camera control while you're flying around so you can see where the enemies are coming from. So, in my opinion, even though this F5 doesn't have a ton of enhanced, improved features, like it doesn't have a crazy RWR, it doesn't have access, you know, to any radar or anything like that, it's super fun to play because it's just a simple platform. And one of the problems that I have at these types of BRs is the platforms get incredibly complicated incredibly fast. You have to learn which radar modes to use, you have to learn how to fully read your RWR, you have to learn how and, you know, where to launch your missiles from, you need to understand energy and where you're kind of sat with that, you need to understand when to countermeasure and when not to countermeasure, you need to understand map positioning and all of these things. And with the F5 you have to think about some of those, but you don't have to worry about all of the extra factors. You don't have to worry about semi-active missiles, which half the time are just not going to work. You don't have to worry about, you know, setting up the vehicle in a way to, you know, what altitude do you need to sit at to make sure that your radar is able to see something, you know, how do you use your ACM in order to target stuff, what range do you have to fire things at. Instead, it's just a simple but effective, okay, I'm going to run at the enemy, I'm going to use my countermeasures to kill their missiles, and I'm just going to flip and dip and whip all over the place, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. And that, to me, I think is really fun and really enjoyable. Now, this vehicle technically does have a secondary role. It isn't just an out-and-out fighter, but its secondary role is just quite low. It has Bullpups, which can be useful in ground, but it's at a BR with radar-guided AAs. It has a bunch of bombs, like as the 2,000 pounder, which it can carry. It also has incendiaries if you want to bomb bases, but I think that's pretty much a worthless thing to do in this thing. The extra modifications in terms of bombs and rockets and stuff like that are just there to make the grind easier for you while you get all of the other modifications. You should focus on the flight performance modifications on this thing. You don't need the flares and chaff pod or the flares and chaff modification, because you're just going to run full flares anyway and learn how to, defend against semi-actives, which generally is not too hard to do with this BR because radars aren't powerful enough, apart from the Draken, which has a pretty good one. So you should get the G-suit, you should get the boosters, you should get this thing flipping and dipping, and you should also get the engine, the wings repair, and just kind of go around and have a bit of fun with it. Now, the guns on this thing are insane. The 20mm M39A2 cannons might be some of my favorite main armament on any jet. The Vulcan might be a little bit better just because of the fire rate and being able to create a laser, but these ones, they have no setup time, they just fire straight away, they have very high muzzle velocity, and also you get a ton of ammunition. 560 rounds is amazing on a vehicle like this, and being able just to rat-a-tat with it is just really nice. And once you get used to the muzzle velocity of the guns, you'll be able to just tear anything apart, and your longevity in the battle is very high as well, because of the simple fact that you have so many rounds, and also you can manage your fuel quite well, because the actual engines on this thing are quite efficient compared to other vehicles. So as a first step into an F5, it feels really good, and it also just feels really nice to play. And when you compare it to what else is in the tech tree of the same BR, you have the Alpha Jet TH, which really struggles with speed. Basically, the Alpha Jet TH, when people ask for like better missiles on an F5 because they're not as good, you get stuff like the Alpha Jet TH Phase 1, where you have pretty decent missiles, the all-aspect AIM-9Ps, the AIM-9Ps with the El Seeker head. But guess what? You are so slow and so cumbersome, you just kind of get twatted. Or you could play the F5, which is incredibly maneuverable, will knock stuff like the Alpha Jet TH out the air without even thinking, and you can just get rid of the enemy's missiles. That is kind of the contrast between what is fun to me and what is not fun. A vehicle that can get into a position to use its armament, where the other one relying on its armament to bail it out of positions. And for me, that's why the F5 is so much better. And at this BR, for Japan nowadays, you have the A7E, which can be used in ground forces because it has access to the funny AGM-62s, which you can drop on people, the good old TV-guided bombs. You have stuff like the Aviate Late if you want that missile platform, which isn't very good at dogfighting. You have the F4EJ Phantom, which once again is kind of the same deal. Or you can play the F-5A, which is the Dogfighter. It's a really nice rank for Japan nowadays, where before it was super limited in terms of what it had access to. So if you've never played an F5, please give them a go. They're really fun and enjoyable. This one, I ended up playing 37 battles, 62% win rate, 100 air kills, 14 deaths. And that's just wandering around, literally just dogfighting things, shooting them in the face, and having a great time. Highly recommend playing the vehicle, and I highly recommend pretty much all the F5s. They slightly get worse as you get into the really late ones, but they're still going to be fun for a lot of people, and they're just really, really nice platforms. And nowadays, they're pretty much in every tech tree, so obviously that helps them out too. Look after yourselves, peace be with you, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.